Alrighty, welcome everyone to a new ZEPETO for Developers monthly live stream. So if you're not familiar with what this series is, this is just the time for us to give you guys an update on everything that's been going on in ZEPETO over the last month, announce some exciting new features, and then also give some tips and things like that. So we have a couple exciting things to share in this meetup. So hopefully this will be very informative for you guys. So our agenda for today, we're going to start with a quick introduction. My name is John Lee. I'm a tech evangelist here. We also have Monzo, who's also a tech evangelist, and Buhyun. So we're all tech evangelists here in ZEPETO. That's kind of helping people out and like sharing different tech updates and things like that. Over in ZEPETO. We also have members of the community. We have Abba, we have Stephanie, and we have Chris, all from the community that works to manage and keep in touch with you guys in the developer community. So with that, we're going to move right along to some of the community updates that they have. I'm going to pass the mic along to Stephanie, who's going to give you guys some announcements.
Thank you, John. Yes, excited to meet you guys again for this October. First of all, we have the World Gem going on. We did introduce this in September. The registration is finally live, so please go ahead and register if you're interested. This is going to be a 6-week-long event where you'll be able to develop some worlds and get some prizes. So we're excited to have you all join this. And this actually starts next week. So be sure to register before the 30th. EST time. And following up, we actually have the opening ceremony that's happening next Monday as well, 10 a.m. Eastern time, 2 p.m. GMT. We're going to talk about some program details and go over some key dates that's important for the event. And as a special guest, we have last World Gems winner Codeller joining us to share their experience about their World Gem last round. And additionally, we will finally be revealing the theme of this World Gem. So be sure to join us this Monday and RSVP via the link here. And starting from this month, we are going to showcase a developer from our incentive program. This month, it's going to be the Find 5 Fruits developer called Chang Sang-il. He actually won October's Week 1 Next Impact, which goes to the world that has the highest day 1 retention. So congratulations to Sang-il. And if you guys don't know, we have an incentive program that's running every week and every month. So do check it out on our Notion page for that as well. Yeah, that's it from the community and event side. Tossing the mic back to John.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. So we have a couple world development updates. We have 2 updates that have happened over the last month. First, we're going to talk about World SDK version 1.21.6 and what features have been this one. It's not a very large update, but we do have very important announcements to make here. So number 1, IWP support will be discontinued. What this means is that if you have a world already live that uses IWP, that's fine. You can keep it as is. The only thing though is that if maybe there's an issue or if there's like an unsupported feature inside of the IWP package or bugs that you notice, we will no longer be officially actively supporting IWP, and we are switching over to the product package. So it's highly recommended if you guys do switch to the product package. If you have a world in development, please do switch to the product package. And if you feel so inclined, you can also take down your world, update to the product package and resubmit as well. But yeah, so the IWP support will be discontinued. An exact date will be shared over Discord. So please keep that in mind. Another thing is that the World SDK versions below 1.15 will be discontinued. Most of you probably won't be experiencing this because if you're newer developers, you're probably already past like 1.20. But for those of you that have maybe been around for a while, please make sure to update your template version, because like if you create a new project, if you haven't updated your template, your initial project version will be stuck on 1 point or whatever version that you did when you first downloaded the template. So updating your template will be also beneficial to you as well. But just keep in mind that 1.15, under 1.15 will now no longer be officially supported. Moving right along, we have some camera definitions for the character controller. We have some updated classes on the documentation for the ZEPETO camera. So if you're interested in see what has changed, please do take a look here. Next is 1.21.7 updates. For this one, we have fixed a get profile texture where if you're loading your profile, there were cases where the resolution was way too small and it would look very blurry on high resolution devices and things like that. So that has been fixed so that it's not as blurry. We have a higher resolution profile that's being loaded. The next update is membership registration pop-up. So if a user enters your world that maybe has not properly registered, meaning that they've created a ZEPETO user, but they haven't linked their email address or phone number or actually created an account and password for that ID, then it'll show this warning. And basically what this says is just if you want to utilize certain features of this world, you need to be registered. So it's just going to give a pop-up so that they can go register before they enter. Next is some upcoming World SDK updates. So we have a couple like exciting new features that are going to be coming down the line. Some features that you guys have been waiting for quite a long time. So to deliver that exciting news, I'm going to pass the mic on to Poo-hyun from HQ.
All right, thank you, John. I'll be introducing some of the features that the creators might be expecting for upcoming weeks and months, which the creators have been asking for to be introduced to the World SDK. We have been working on some of those features, and we are now here to introduce some of the features. The first one is the Sending Direct Messages API, which is going to be delivered next week, which will enable the users who are in your world to send messages to your followers or following friends or some of the friends that you as a creator of the world designated to send the message to. So utilizing this feature, the user can share their in-world achievements with their friends and any other good usage that you can introduce to your world. So please enjoy this feature, which will be live next week. Next one is the Item Gift API. I'm not sure whether you have played the Zempire Party, which has opened recently in the ZEPETO app, which is basically enabling the user to gift some item to the users inside the world. So we have introduced this API feature to our SDK, and it's also going to be able to for the creators to utilize next week. And it's going to be the feature which enables the user in a world to purchase an item and send it to another player. And the player can also include a message with the item. So on the right side, there's a screenshot that item has delivered to you with the message, and it's gonna be able for the user to do that if you integrate this API in your world starting next week. And another one which you can expect in November is the Social Share API. The screenshot on the right side is the sharing UI outside the world in ZEPETO app. And we're gonna introduce this, bring that UI in the world so that a player within playing in your world can share something in the world to outside app social app as in the UI. You can share text and links to the outside app using this social share feature. So it's another interesting thing for you to integrate into your world. And the last thing is the biggest announcement, which you can expect to be delivered by the end of the year. We're working on it, which is addressable asset system. And it enables you to host your assets on a server and access them via unique keys. That means you don't have to integrate those assets in your world package, but to use the key to address the assets uploaded to the server and download in the runtime and use it in your world, so that you will improve initial load times for your world and reduce memory usage and trim your world size. Many of you have been struggling with your world size, and using this API, it's going to be much easier to manage your world size. And you can easily update assets online without the need to repackage your world. As I've said, you will be using a specific key to address the assets uploaded to the online asset manager. And if you update the asset online, you don't need to repackage your world, but the users using your world will access to the newer version of the asset with the same key. So it's another great thing for you to utilize in the future. And hopefully you can do better things in a way that you manage your assets. All right, so next is the new and update guide. And I will be covering the first slide of this section. We have introduced a new structure of the navigation tree in the World SDK guide, which you can see on the left side of the World guide. Before this reordering, it was quite hard, even for me, to navigate to the information I need on the World SDK guide. But we have reorganized the tree, so it's more intuitive to navigate to what you actually need to refer to. So please, you can easily find what you need now. And we are working on World SDK API reference, and this is something you've been asking for a long time as well. And we are working on it, and we are going to be able to deliver the first part of the API reference in the guide by the end of the year. So please stay tuned to the Discord community, so you don't miss the first opening of the SDK API reference. And we're also working on overview for each section of the newly structured organized navigation, so that you can easily have more better comprehension to each feature we deliver through the SDK. Up to you, John.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Boyan. If you have any questions about some of the stuff that Boyan mentioned, or anything about the updated guides, updated world versions, please stick around for the Q&A session. I know some of you, the addressables in particular, piqued some of your interest. So stick around for the Q&A session. We'll be answering some questions there. Some new guides to announce here. So for the first one here is if you're maybe newer to development in general, or scripting, Hello World is probably going to be the very first thing that you're ever going to learn in any programming language. And this is our Hello World for ZEPETO script. So if you want a quick introduction to programming, understand the syntax of how to code, things like that, this is going to be where you're going to be starting for ZEPETO. Next, I mentioned before that we have updated character controller. Please do take a look at the new kind of updates for the ZEPETO camera. There may be some features on there that you might be interested in utilizing in your world. So again, do take a look here. Next, we have, so last month we've announced that we're deprecating the character controller API, and so we've compiled a list of exactly what was deprecated and how to maybe adapt the changes if there were some features that were removed that maybe is critical to you. This will be a guide of everything that's deprecated as a what version. And if there is a replacement for it, how to replace that in your API as well. So take a look here if maybe you've struggled a bit or you're currently struggling a bit because of that deprecated code. Take a look in this guide. Next, this is kind of something that if you've ever done a vector math in TypeScript, you might have noticed little squigglies telling you that there's an error. This can be, for the most part, it's okay to ignore because when you're running in Unity, it won't actually cause an issue. So vector math, if you're multiplying, two vectors, or if you're dividing two vectors, or whatever kind of vector math that you're doing, it's okay to keep those. But if that makes you uncomfortable, we have OP addition, OP subtraction. We have, if inside of the vector3 class, there's a couple vector math functions that you can utilize, and that will be completely safe to use. So if you want to stick to the more safe side and get rid of those errors in VS Code, you can utilize these functions. Next is if you've ever, if you're curious about how to use a gyro sensor, or if you think that maybe gyroscope or some sort of accelerometer stuff in your world would be interesting, this will be a guide that will show exactly how to utilize a gyroscope, and then kind of if you can tilt your phone around, you can move the ball. This is gonna kind of be a guide to show how that works. Next is a concept that maybe you guys haven't really heard of before, but it's a concept of referencing and unreferencing. So normally, if you guys are programmers that are listening to this, when you're passing in a function in TypeScript, and you have when you're passing variables as parameters to a function, that's going to be passed by value, meaning that that variable will be completely owned by that function. So whatever changes was made to the variable is going to be kept inside of that function and then lost. The changes will be lost. In C#, you might be familiar with the concept of the out parameter, right? And what that does is if you're passing a variable into a function, you can expect any changes that were made inside of that function to the variable that you passed in will be retained in memory, so that when you're after that function, when you reference that variable, it will have all of the changes that were made by the function. That's exactly what ref and unref, so very long-winded way to explain that. Ref and unref does exactly what that does. Particularly raycasting will do this. Raycasting has an out parameter in C#, and you're going to have to use ref and unref for that. There's probably other things, other natives, Unity classes that utilize the same kind of pattern. So it might be good to know this. Next is the concept of singletons. So rather than making, if you want to access a variable in another class, rather than making a variable reference to that object every single time and using get component, what you can do is a pattern called singletons. And what this does is it'll basically allow you to create an instance of the class in memory at all times. So you can always have access to the class and its variables and its functions, no matter what script you're in, without making a variable reference. So that's what singletons would do. So take a look into this if you're interested in that. Next, we have a guide for the input class. If you're maybe more veteran Unity developers, you might be used to the input class way of using input. If you're doing input get key or input get mouse button or something like that, that isn't part of the new input system that Unity introduced, you're going to get an error in our project because our project does not, or at least the project settings by default when you open a new project doesn't support that. So if you want to support the old input settings, input system, there's a setting in Unity that you can kind of check to enable both old and new input systems. New input system will always be necessary because that's what our character controller runs on. but you can enable both old and new input systems, and it'll show you exactly how to do that in this guide here. Next is something we're trying for, this is a new kind of segment that we're trying this month. We want to introduce a world that we thought was really, really cool. And we want to show off some features and give some guides and tips on what was happening in this world, so that you guys can learn a little bit of some of the techniques that were used in this in the worlds that we highlight. So I'm just going to play through this world just a little bit. On the Way Home is created by Studio Playtory, and they're an amazing studio. And when you enter, there's this train, and then there's like this little spot that you can sit, and then you can create like these timeline sequences where you can have like really cool post-processing effects, and like when you're you can create like unique feeds with really cool effects on your camera. Things like that. And with this Halloween update, they introduced something really, really cool. You can see just the sheer number of NPCs that exist in this world. And if you try to drop this many NPCs or this many character models inside of a world and try to have them all animate, you're not going to get the same result here, because there's very specific tricks that they utilize to make sure that it still runs smoothly with as many agents as you see. Normally this would crash and burn your phone, but it's running smoothly here. And the first technique that I'm going to share that they use here was something called vertex animation textures. If you've never heard of that before, so the concept of bones in animations is very, very expensive. So in any model, if you have, let's say you have any humanoid model, you have different joints, right? If I take the hand, right, and then extend it, then my arm, my shoulder, all of that kind of moves along with it, and it is automatically calculated. That calculation is what makes it very, very heavy. What they're doing here is something called vertex animation textures, where there's no bones at all. There's no animating bones or joints at all. It's just all the animation data is all compact inside of a texture, and then kind of parsed through by a shader. So that's a very cool technique that they utilize here. Another thing is if you'll notice the pumpkins kind of fading in as you walk throughout the area. And this is actually not transparency. Transparency in a game is very, very expensive, particularly mobile games, because in a single pixel, you have to render both the thing behind that pixel, behind the object, and the pixel and the object itself. So it has to do a double pass, which will double the number of draw calls, right? In your game. And this is a very important statistic when optimizing your world to reduce the number of draw calls as much as possible. The technique they're using here is something called dithering. And basically, instead of actually rendering transparency, they're poking holes in the mesh, right? And they're poking a bunch of holes to make it look transparent, and then kind of closing the number of holes that they're punching to make it look like it's fading in. The third concept is a concept called occlusion culling. So this is just the concept that like if objects are hidden behind certain other objects, you don't actually render those objects, and that will reduce the number of draw calls as well in your game, because you're not going to be rendering things when you can't actually see them in camera. So yeah, so Mondo's actually going to be going in a little bit more detail about some of this stuff. I just wanted to show you this cool gameplay. So definitely check it out. Studio Playtory, and this is On the Way Home. And with that, I'll pass the mic on to Mondo to give you guys an in-depth about some of these techniques.
Thank you, John. Yes, that On the Way Home is, I think, also now one of my favorite visual games on ZEPETO. When I first opened it up, I was really amazed. Not only does it look great, but the techniques that they use to be able to do that is super interesting. And John has touched a little bit on what those techniques are. Let's go in and talk a bit more about the details of these techniques. So the first technique that they use, and this is kind of hard to see in the game, but basically it's called camera occlusion culling. And what this is it's a process which prevents your game engine from rendering game objects that are completely hidden from view. So for example, if you're like behind a wall and you're looking at a scene, you should see that wall, but you should not see the stuff behind the wall. So because you don't see that stuff, it's not being rendered. This is great for optimization. This is the thing that will allow your game to run at higher frames per second while having tons of objects on the scene. So camera occlusion culling can be done in Unity. And if you take a look here later on in the documentation, I provide a link here where you can take a look at how to do that in Unity. And this is a further reference for you guys. This is very interesting. Again, like I said, occlusion culling is super cool. It's a way to basically have tons of objects in your world, but still have your game run at 30 frames a second or whatever your target frames per second is. And there's just 2 tutorials here. One is a Unity tutorial about occlusion culling. This is another tutorial that's also super helpful. One thing that is nice to do, and the great thing about Unity or even tutorials, is that find a bunch of tutorials online, and each one which kind of explain in a way that just makes more sense to you. So definitely take a look at all these different tutorials on how to do occlusion culling. All right, and the next part is, as mentioned before, it's dithering. So dithering is super cool. It's basically a way to fake expensive full transparency by punching holes in the rendering. Pixels are either on or off, which is very much more performant than if you had some kind of transparency value between 0 and 255. So this is a great technique. If you take a look at this image here, you can see that basically there's no real transparency going on. Basically, there's just a pattern, like a full screen pattern that basically the pixels are either on and off, and it's just some kind of pattern that kind of fakes transparency, but this is super efficient, way more efficient than actual real transparency. So if you guys want to do more research on this, there's some links here that you can take a look at. One is a GitHub example, which actually shows you the code for writing that shader. Another one is an ArtStation example, which shows a cool implementation of just hiding behind objects. And then finally, there's this Unity example where you guys can take a look at how to do this kind of thing in Unity. And then here's some game examples of it happening in video games. Here's a Genshin Impact example. This person actually explains how this is done, and he uses Genshin Impact as an example. And the next one is Mario, where they also use this effect. But both of these definitely worth taking a look at. It's super cool, super interesting how this can be implemented in your game. And this is something that not only is a performance thing, but it can actually be a visual kind of stylistic choice. So you can actually make your fade in and fade out look more artistic by using dithering. So not only is it more performant, but it is actually a visual style that you can go after. And then finally, we're going to talk about vertex animation, which you saw before, which, as John was explaining, there's a bunch of crowds in the scene. How do they do this? If you were to use bone animation, this is not going to be possible. Vertex animation is a cheap, performant way of creating animations by baking the vertex animation itself down into a 2D texture. And not only is this good for crowds, but it's also good for things like cloth and physics simulations. So for example, a flag flapping or page turning, those kinds of things aren't actually even possible really using bones. So really vertex animation sometimes is the only way to do some kinds of animations. And you can see here, there's a link to the tutorial here about how to bake down a page flip into a vertex animation. And then here's a reference page of just more examples for you to take a look at later on. Basically, there's ones about how to bake animation for destruction. There's this super cool one about how to do crowd animation in Unity. This one's super exciting. Basically, instead of having 10, 20, 30 characters on screen, why don't you have 100 characters? This is something you might want in your game. And then finally, things like cloth animation in this third example, things like cloth folding or even liquid simulations, those things cannot run in real time on your mobile device. And it's not even possible to animate that with bones. But with this, you can do it with vertex animation. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to you, John, and we'll talk about the next part.
Thank you so much. So we're gonna talk. So we're gonna save the section for some Q&A. We're gonna look through the YouTube chat to answer any questions that you guys might have had. So at this point, please do drop any questions that you might have had about anything that we've talked about throughout this meetup. So this is for you guys.
I have a question. Besides On the Way Home, I think I got the name right. What other world do you love on ZEPETO?
Runway Z. I love the way, like, yeah, I love Runway Z. I love the way, like, the animations for them walking down the runway is like really cool.
I feel like everybody should give their answer. What is your favorite world on there? Okay, there's a question that came in. The world I submitted for the fellowship program, I might make the player hold a spear and has a butterfly following him everywhere. Any thoughts on that?
I might make the player hold a spear and has a butterfly following him everywhere. Also create a custom human animation and import into Unity rather than simply download animations from XML. Yeah, you can definitely create your own custom humanoid animations. You don't have to do it from XML. I believe I don't know if we have specific guides. Correct me if I'm wrong on exactly how to create these kinds of human animations and import them into Unity, but I believe as long as it's set up as a humanoid animation type, it should be adaptable when you import it into Unity.
Yeah, you should be able to just import. Yep, it's just an animation from any 3D program you want, as long as it's humanoid. Yeah, you're good to go.
I think someone in the chat answered your question off of what their favorite world is, and they said my home. I think that's another cool world too. You get to like customize and make your own space, show off to other users. Definitely one of our favorites as well.
Yeah, On the Way Home is super cool. Actually, there's a cool example of a shader in that world as well. Like if you walk into the water, you'll notice that like objects that are dipped into the water have this kind of like foamy water effect around it, which is super cool. Like it's very subtle, but it's really nice. And the water is actually like animating in a wave. So yeah, it's super cool.
I think another one is Rooms, the Toy Maker's Workshop.
Oh yeah.
That one is really cool. There's a lot of like cool technical stuff going on in there as well.
Yeah.
Definitely check that one out. That one's really nice.
I feel like on our next meetup, we should let everybody give a description of their favorite worlds and send us pictures because we want to see what everybody is playing. So
that's a good idea. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
That'll be fun. Steph, you want to talk a bit about the incentive program again so that people, are excited about it and get people to build worlds. Let them know what's up out there in our community.
Sure. Yeah, so going back to the incentive program a little bit. So we are monitoring every world that is up on ZEPETO in terms of the data. So that data includes how many players, what the retention is after day 1, day 3. We really emphasize on the playtime per user being longer than 5 minutes. So we monitor all those, and on the incentive program Notion page that we shared in the chat, we always update it on a weekly basis of our top 10 worlds based on total time of stay in the world, and also the bounty prizes, which include the retention, average playtime per user, and etc. So keep a lookout for that. We are very transparent of this and who wins what prize on which week and month. So yeah, we are excited to see some new games pop up on the incentive program bounty prizes and the actual main prize for top 10. And if you guys have any questions about it, do drop us a chat on Discord and we'll answer some questions around it.
Yes, please. So please build more worlds. And Brilliant Bibbe says, I made some worlds with Build It. We love it. We love it. Please send us a
Nice.
picture.
It's awesome.
We love it.
I think Build It's a great starting point. There's a lot of really cool worlds that came out with Build It.
We don't hate it at all. Please send us pictures. We'd love to see it too. But if we don't have any more questions, I think we can wrap up here. Before we go, I have a question for everybody though. This is my icebreaker question. If you're an animal in the animal kingdom, what would be your animal of choice? And everybody on the live, please also put it in the comments before we go. That's our goodbye question before we sign off, everybody.
I'll pick lemur. I'll be a lemur.
Humor.
What about you, John? What would you be?
I would be. I'll be an eagle.
Eagle. Okay.
Very, yeah.
How about you, Beyond? What would you be?
I don't know why, but I'm into snakes these days. It's not really welcome the animal, but I don't know. I have feelings. I would be a snake.
How about you, Chris? What would you be?
Probably be an elephant.
I see that. How about you, Steph?
I would be some sort of I don't know, in the cats family. Very much into big cats, little cats. So whichever cat that falls into my radar, I'll be that.
Fair. Step Upper says, why are Build It worlds not included in the incentive program?
This is really for new worlds, for worlds that are made with Unity. We do have quite a bit of Build It worlds on our platform, and we really want to emphasize everyone to build worlds that were used in Unity. So that's why we have the incentive program geared around the Unity world. So please keep that in mind as well. And going back, as for the ZEPETO World Gem 2, that's only eligible for worlds that were made on Unity only, not for Build It. So yeah, that's another disclaimer.
All right. Brilliant People says she'd be a hedgehog. He or she they'd be a hedgehog. That's a cool one. And Lee says they'd be a magpie. So those are interesting words. But on that note, if there are no questions, I think, John, we can take it home. Over to you again.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining here today, guys. We'll be back next month to share another similar monthly setup. Maybe we'll have some new content. Maybe we'll have some new format. But please look forward to the next monthly dev meeting that we're going to be having. And I'll see you guys next time. Thanks again, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for coming on.